Shalom, everybody. Now let's discuss this message called from Bamidbar. Mauricio, I know you have to leave early, so if you'd like to begin giving a little bit of an understanding of how you saw the drash, I hope you like my message, and let's because you teach it every Tuesday night, so I know you have a lot to say.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Well, right now, pray for Santi because he's right now doing the test for engineering. Okay,
Wow,
so,
God given me. Ah,
Oh,
he'll
is
be
it
great.
test for what? Sorry, didn't hear.
Engineering.
Oh, fantastic.
yeah. So right now he was so stressed today in the morning because he was telling me, "Oh, Dad, I don't know if I can make it. Don't worry, son.
Natural.
I've been studying the whole
Yeah,
month, so
yeah.
don't worry." So what I like to add is that yes, God cares about us. Okay, and we count, and it's interesting because when I was reading the number of the children of Israel, 603 and 550, I
Yeah.
guess, that when you sum that all numbers is 13, which is
Ah,
Echad.
interesting.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. So, and and this is more about what is important today. Uh, we have different functions, we have different objectives, missions in the world, but at the end, we are one. Okay,
Right.
and this is something so important. And also, I love the way that you mentioned that Reuben for the Torah was mentioned first.
Right.
That means that forgive him, okay, for the mistakes, and is recognized and honored to be the first one. And also it's interesting also that, as we mentioned on Tuesday, that we as human trying to put sometimes some people in a high position. Okay, for example, we believe that, oh, Judah is the best. For example, I remember when I was in Christianity, people trying to almost elevate too much to Judah, the Lion of Judah, the Troy of Judah, and Judah. But here we start to see that the functions of the temple, the service of God, was for Levi.
Right.
Judah could be the best, the king, whatever, but he couldn't touch, for example, the you know the the utensils of the temple.
Right.
Okay.
That's what happened
Eh,
with Uzzah.
yes, exactly. And also in those as well, for example, uh, remember that there is another tribe, for example, Menashe, I guess, they were they have flock, for example.
The
They
what?
need some, they need flock to animals, okay?
Right.
So they were pastors and things like that. So you could be,
Shepherds.
yeah, they could be shepherds, and yes, you could be an armor king and whatever, but with no food, you will not survive.
Right.
So everyone was so important for God, okay, and and also even in the V tribe, they didn't have the same functions. One was for the holy
Right.
of the holies, and the other one was for the exterior parts of the Mishkan, and so So no matter what you do, we have mentioned this in many ways in this congregation. No matter what is your part, even though you talk, not talk, you are here, not here, whatever,
Right.
you are important. You count to God, and
Right.
and this is and also it's important to differentiate. So the part of the value of the person and the function of the person, we are all the same value,
Right.
okay, but we have different um, I would say different gifts, okay, from the creator. So that is more about what is about this portion, and also um, it's interesting that God sent to the desert the people, because it's like the prophet was saying, um, it's God that wants to give us the ketuvah, the 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 compromising to his bride, which is Israel. And you know, sometimes we need to go to the desert to because uh, first, Bamidbar doesn't mean really like wilderness, you know, sand, sun.
Right.
No, it's a place which is arid, but it has
Oasis.
yeah, exactly, oases. They have, for example, grass. Okay,
Palm
Eh, eh, eh,
trees.
yeah, because if not, how could survive the whole
Right.
flock? Yeah.
Right.
So, but in these places, is you know, the most important thing is that there is no uh, mm, what do you do in the desert? Okay.
Count sand.
Yeah, not only count sand. I mean, there you can focus. Okay. And people like me, that is very hard to concentrate in a place. I remember that I used to go to lonely places to study.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't study, for example, at cafeteria. I admire people who can do that, or
Get
they
too
go to,
distracted.
yeah, or they could be, you know, at a mall and they are studying, and everybody is shouting, kids crying, and music aloud, and
Yeah.
things like that. They have a gift to concentrate.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Me too.
So I needed to go to a desert place.
Right.
Okay, just me and my books.
Yeah.
Okay,
And my God.
and God helping me to study.
Yeah.
I mean, and focus. So, and this is how God really reveals, because you know God is God who is very jealous, and He needs that you are focused on Him.
Right.
So, in that place, you can really focus on God. Okay, and this is like a pandemic. People needs to live together. So also God sent them to to a place so can learn to dwell together.
Right.
Uh, I can remember right now, but there are so many people who get divorced. I can remember that the statistics right now in El Salvador, but around many people get divorced during the COVID-19
Right.
because they couldn't live together as family.
Right.
Okay. In this was so stressful for these persons, because the time they have every day is just to say good night, good day, and that's it. That the rest of the day, no communication, no. So, and this is very important at the desert, because what can we do? Okay, we need to play, we need and also another thing is the way that the campament was built. start to raise up that the tribes that were leaders. From one side, Judah; from other side, Ephraim, Menashe, and Dan. And also, um, is interesting that when you look these four tribes and you compare them to the prophet Ezekiel, okay, who were looking to four beasts, okay, remember the man, the serpent, the cow, the bull. I can remember the other one, and the
The
man.
lion?
Yeah, yeah. I can remember right now, but there were four different animals.
Okay.
Okay, so they are the very same tribes. So God,
Oh,
yeah, so God was like prophetizing. Okay, these tribes will raise up the whole, and also we were discussing about, oh, how can we know today, for example, that about the tribes lost? Because I don't know, they start to asking me about that, and honestly, for me, the at the end, all the tribes were mixed.
right,
Okay, they survive, and yes, there are a lot of people who really disappear. Okay, at Babylon and at Syria, and but God also had a remnant,
right.
okay, from every tribe, and they returned back to Judah, for the kingdom of Judea, and yes, after the exile, so then everything was lost because there are no more registered records, okay,
Right. On the temple.
okay, of the temple. So, uh, but at the end, that is something that God allowed. I believe that He allowed because He wants not to be tribes, but
Right,
to be a nation.
right.
Okay, to be Israel, and this is something that today is possible because right now, yes, they can live in the land of X tribe. Okay, but at the end, they are recognized as Israel, just as one. So that is important, in and that's for me what is important from this parasha. Okay,
Beautiful. Let us know how your son does.
yeah,
I'm sure he's going to do very well because if he studied, he's a smart boy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. That's when you look back and you are growing, then you start to think that was easier than you imagine. Okay, is that only that you need to have a little bit of bitahon, okay, to
Yes.
grow, to get to fulfill the expectations, especially from one. Okay,
Yeah.
um, in at the end, you can see the hand of God guiding you the whole life. Uh, but eh, and this is something that really believe that Israel happened during this time of to be at the desert. Can you imagine how the things that cross over the head of Israel at that moment? Okay, oh, we are beginning. We are not a nation. We are. It's like Israel. Okay, what they did from 1948 up to date.
A
So
miracle.
it's a miracle, okay? But it's just needed to have bitachon and have faith, keeping believing that God is holding you, okay? And
If you saw my life from
yeah,
the time 1989 is when I turned to God. If you saw my life then at the beginning to now, I'm a completely different person. And still, I see myself growing and growing and growing as I learn to trust him. And I remember, well, just last week, just this past week, I was challenged with how I was asked to do something that raised up in me the fear, how am I going to do this again? Until the middle of the week. And here I'm writing this message. And in the middle of the week, I became so physically exhausted that I was saying to God, okay, I'm ready to go home. I just didn't want to be here. And I had to stop and ask God to show me what was going on. And I started to look at all the things that I was afraid of and how I was comparing myself to someone else. And I didn't think that I was gifted enough to do it. And it was just all these things going on in my head. And when I finally saw what I was doing and gave it to God, it was like the next day I was fine again. I was no longer fatigued. And what turned out that this person asked me to do couldn't be done. And I didn't hear from them anymore.
Mhm.
And it's always just trusting him. That is the key to everything, not to be afraid to take the next step. And we go through these hurdles every single day of our lives. It's amazing. It's,
Yes.
yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful parasha.
Thank you, Peggy. It was really.
Wow. Shabbat shalom.
Sorry.
Shabbat shalom,
Oh,
Maurice.
Shabbat Shalom, Mauricio.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How old is his son, Mauricio's son?
I'm not sure. It must be 17.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he wants to go into engineering.
I guess so.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for the message. A few things come to my brain about how we create a hierarchy of worth in our own society. We even do it individually. We almost do it automatically, but really we're all the same in God's eyes, the same value. I remember a story that an old friend that I used to call Santa Claus. Anyway, he told me a story of this Chinese diplomat or whatever, but nobody knew what he was. Or I can't remember exactly the details. They were sitting, a bunch of important people, giving a speech or whatever, and this American guy or someone was speaking English, and there was okay, how do I say that? There was an Asian man sitting there, and he gave the speech. Oh yeah, the Asian man was sitting in the front, and the American guy goes over to the oh no, sorry, okay.
I'm so confused, Miriam. I don't
I
know.
know, sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Okay, let me
Can you
start again.
just-
There's
yeah.
this conference, whatever, and this American was there, and he gives a speech, and he goes over to this Asian man. One of the officials was sitting there, and he bows to him, and he goes, "Likey speechy."
Oh,
The man bows to him, and then they call this Asian man up, and it turns out he has like 1,000 PhDs. He's brilliant, whatever. And he starts to speak in very good English. And so then he goes up to the man afterwards. He goes, like he's speaking.
that's hilarious.
But I mean, I remember also having these sort of things happen in my own life when, for example, somebody comes in and you don't know that they're an important person, and people don't treat them as well, they treat them like
Right.
everyone else.
Right.
And then when they find out who they are, oh, can I get you a coffee? Can I do this?
Yeah.
We are so affected by that, but yet our rules, our rules are all important.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what else did I say?
You remember, just on that same subject before you get onto another one,
Yeah.
do you remember when the rabbi told us he went to Mexico City the first time, and he was at the airport, and he told us how he saw this magnificent mosaic. It was just beautiful. And he approached it. He went really close, and he saw all the little pieces that make up the mosaic. And he said, each of us are like a mosaic in this grand, beautiful picture. And if one piece were to come out of the mosaic, even though it's small and seemingly insignificant, it would change the whole picture. We're all important, each and every one of us. And one of the things that God is showing us here is Don't want the role of what anybody else.
That's another thing. Yeah.
Be who you are. God is giving you the gifts and the talents that you need to fulfill the role that He gave you. We don't need to be like anyone else. And I'm always struggling with that because I put myself out there as, speaking about the Torah. So I look at other people who speak about other things and I think, well, I'm not as good as them. I can't speak the way they do. And then it starts to make me feel afraid to do what I'm doing, which is so wrong because God didn't make me them. He made me me. And
Yeah.
and the me is growing. The more that I do it, the more I never thought I would be able to write a message. English was one of my worst subjects in school. I couldn't write a composition properly. And, like Mauricio said, he couldn't focus, he couldn't concentrate. I would read, and sometimes I have to read the same sentence 10 times to really get it into my brain. But, I have other gifts. So, and God doesn't want us to be so proud about our gifts because the gifts are from Him. So there's so many. You were gonna say,
Well, I guess along that line too, sometimes we do things that are the correct things, and we get tired, we work hard in doing things, and really God's not calling us to do those things. I'm not saying we all have many things to do. We don't just do things. We all have to do all sorts of things. But sometimes we try and take on stuff that's not our gift, or I saw that in teaching, how people wanted to do certain things that they weren't called to do. I've seen that when I used to go to the church, how people, valued the pastor above everyone else, and try. And I remember some people who would get up and speak, and they said, "Oh, um, they had a desire to be a pastor, but they didn't have the gift."
yeah,
Just speaking well with a loud oratorial voice doesn't make you gifted to be.
or someone who wants to sing and doesn't have a voice.
Yeah, that's that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's sorry, something popped up. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. It was really.
But the other thing for me also that stood out is about the first thing that God does is He builds an army. An army. He knew that we would have to fight battles the next 38 years in the desert, constantly at war. And one of the things that stood out for me also was that you know I wrote it here. Maybe it'll just be easier for me to read it, but I didn't put it in my message. We also have lost the notion that we are descendants of an ancient chosen people. Most people think that the newborn nation of Israel began in 1948 without realizing that it had been formed by God after we left Egypt. This younger generation, today, the young generation, we may think that the name Israel has only recently become a pariah, which is, a pariah is something that's hated in the world. But the sinat chinam we suffer began thousands of years ago with Amalek. Did Amalek appear out of nowhere? The verses that preceded Amalek's attack in Exodus 17 tell a different story, one that's been repeated throughout our history. It says that the people fought with Moses and cried out, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said, "Why are you fighting with me? Why are you testing the Lord?" The name of the place was called Massa and Meribah because of the striving of the children of Israel, because they tested the Lord, saying, "Where is God? Is He with us or not?" How many of people today, are our own people, are saying the same things? Where was God in the Holocaust? Where was God on October 7th? Our children, for the most part, prefer to integrate into the nations where they're living, where they get married, and very few want to know God. And even more don't want to know the Torah. So, we have to look at what are we doing before these attacks happen? And it's a hard thing to look at, the same as what I said about last Wednesday when I was feeling so sick. What was I doing? How was I fearing? How was I not trusting God? What comes first? Not the attack, but our lack of trust and our refusal to be obedient to God's words.
And we are each an army in ourselves. Like we're at war. I find like I was talking to my brother and I said, and I won't give you the whole thing, but that you're at war. But God is leading us, our army. We are an army within ourselves. And it's so true that
Yeah.
trust we have, God is always with us. And
Right.
even as you said with Reuben, all the things he had done that were so horrible, but then he still honored him as the firstborn. So God really does forgive us.
Yeah, beautiful.
If we're willing to accept that forgiveness, willing to accept that there's a God who leads us. I mean, so often I've told you in the past that there's certain things I've done, I can't forgive myself. I just find it so hard. And I have to let that go. That's a form of lack of trust, really.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can only do it by going to God with it,
Yeah.
talking to him. He says, come and reason with me. Though your sins are like scarlet, I will make them white as snow.
Right.
And you have to believe him. Because if
Yeah.
you're not believing him, you're not trusting him. So who else is there to trust?
But even that, because a personality like me, okay, I am not an easy believer, so a personality like me, I have to go to God all the time and say,
We all
please,
do, Mary.
yeah, but give me the faith even to believe you're there. Like sometimes I get these wacko feel ideas and the things I read about things, I think, what if it's true that we're a multiverse, for example? I
Yeah,
mean, I go to these
I
crazy
know.
places and I say, God, give me the faith,
Yeah.
touch me, and that you even are real.
Yeah, we all go through that. Some people go through it longer. Some people go through it like you tell me I have the emotional lifespan of a fruit fly. So I change very fast. I can get it quickly, but it comes back, and I have to constantly, it's a constant inner struggle with ourselves and God. That's what Israel is, struggling with God.
And
That's
the warrior, the army we have. Remember when Shaul said, "Put on the armor of
I
God"?
was going to mention that. Put on the full armor of God, the breastplate of righteousness, the helmet of truth. That's what the Torah is. Learning the commandments and how they relate to our lives. All these things that we're going to be reading, about their journey have to do with when they obeyed the commandments, the blessings that would follow, the joy that would happen, celebration, and then the failures again, and having to start all over again. But the wonderful thing about the spiral of walking with God is that it's always going upwards. So we go 2 steps forward, and when we fall, we only fall 1 step back. So we're always getting higher and higher in our spiritual life and wisdom. But when we don't walk with God, we really are on a downward spiral, and that's a very dangerous place to be.
But we have to remember when we do fall, even in small ways, and not to lose hope and not to think, oh my God, I'm going backwards or whatever. Like even in a little way, like yesterday, I told you I had an incredibly delicious chunk of chocolate cake. And I knew when I ate it, it was so rich. It was just so good. And I said, well, I ate it. Okay.
Thank God it's not one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not eat chocolate. Hold on a second here. Yeah,
Anyway, I'm
yeah.
just saying I paid the price for it. And sometimes when I'm feeling sugared out the way I get with too much sugar, it brings out my negative emotions. And I was thinking, why am I feeling? I was so angry this morning, not at anything, just things like throwing my clothes. I couldn't find what. And then I said, this is physical. And I just remembered the chocolate cake. And I've had this before that sometimes too much sugar affects my emotions. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, Miriam, let it go now. And you've learned your lesson, whatever, and just
Till the
move
next time.
on.
Okay. Yes, Richard.
Everybody,
Hi.
I wanted to talk about what we read in the Haftorah about fig trees in Hosea chapter 2, verse 14.
Okay.
Figs and fig trees have been quite symbolic in the Bible. Even in the New Testament, the I won't go there, but it symbolized good things,
Yeah.
bounty and health and all these other things. And a shriveled fig tree symbolized almost the opposite. So that's what comes to me.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. There are so many pictures in the Torah. And as far as the New Testament goes, I know our rabbi hated the word New Testament. He would call it the writing, the messianic writings, or the writing, but we can't always trust it except where it does match up with the Torah. And there are things in it that are good. As a matter of fact, there was a lady that I met who's the wife of a rabbi, and she's read it and she said there are beautiful things in it. But again, when it matches up with the Torah, because that's what Yeshua came to do. He wanted to bring us back to Torah. And he describes the fig tree. It's the future of Israel. It's going to be, it could be either, the fig tree could either be a sick fig tree or a rich fig tree. So it depends on us as well. Was there anything else that we wanted to bring up? Does anyone else have something to say? Isabel, Rhonda, Etid, the Alvarados, you don't have to put your picture on. Is there something that you've learned from this message? It would be nice to hear from someone else. Yes, Richard.
Yeah, I learned it's not good to mix figs and sugar. That's what I learned today.
You're so funny.
I used to like fig Newtons.
Oh, yeah, I remember Fig Newtons.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still around,
Yeah, I think so.
You're darn tootin'. We love
And
Fig Newtons.
Hamantaschen with figs. How about Hamantaschen with
Oh,
fig
well,
paste?
figs are delicious when you buy them. Even dried figs are delicious. Yeah. You're so funny. That's great. All right. Well, I guess I'm hoping that my desire in doing these things and continuing Rabbi's work, continuing the work that we do in our community, is that we can trust that God is with us, and we don't have to be religious. And when I say religious, in the modern terms, religious means we believe in God. But it's for us, when we say religious, it means that we have to follow all the rules and regulations that were added throughout the centuries that are in the Talmud. So we can trust and believe in the God of Israel, and remember the things that he's that I got distracted. See, I'm so ADD. Moshe sent a text and I lost my train of thought because I wanted to see what the text said. It's so funny. All right, Moshe, what did you say here? I just appreciate your interesting and amazing stories. I thank you, Moshe, from Uganda. I like to hear that. So let's just continue to try to find ways to apply his commandments to our life so that we can grow, that we can have joy, that we could be blessed, that we could be fulfilled. And that's what God wants from us. He doesn't want to see all these miserable looking faces. Oh, look what I broke again. Look what I didn't do.
And
You
he
know?
wants to give us good things. I mean, in life, he wants to
He
give
made
us,
this whole world for us to
yeah,
rejoice with, to be friends with nature.
yeah.
It gave us, and I love, I remember, oh, ADD is now called ADHD. Yeah, whatever.
Who said that? What?
Richard. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, it's true.
So, I remember when I first came to know God and I read the Sermon on the Mount. And I had just come back from the New Age. I had lost everything. I had 2 bags of clothes. I had nothing. I had a job and I didn't even have clothes to wear to work. And I remember reading the Sermon on the Mount where it says, don't worry about what you're going to eat or what you're going to drink. God knows you need this. He says, don't worry about what you're going to wear. Look at the lilies of the field, how beautiful they are. Even Solomon in all his glory were not arrayed as fine as these, as fabulous as these. And then God started to provide all these beautiful things for me. And even now, today, 30 years later or even more, it's like I'm looking at the God's provision in my life. It's absolutely astounding. I just jump for joy. So we're allowed to be joyful, even with everything going on in the world. God hid our people in Shabbat Shalom, Richard. God hid our people in Goshen when the rest of the world in Egypt were going through the plagues.
And we don't have to feel guilty about being happy.
Don't feel guilty about being happy, being protected. Just learn to be obedient. So that's it. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Shabbat
I
Shalom.
want to
Shabbat
wish
Shalom.
everybody,
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Chag, Shavuot, Sameach. We'll see you on Monday. All of us here, I think, will be there,
Shalom.
except Moshe. You won't be there, but we'll send some pictures and maybe we'll be able to connect with anyone who isn't, maybe a little bit on.
Shabbat Shalom, and
What's
thank
up?
you so much for the dress. It's interesting. Yes.
Thank you, Yanet. Thank you so much. God bless you. And
God.
we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
See you. Bye, Sarai.
Ciao, Sarai.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye bye.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.